She slapped me with a Rolex and called me a murderer in front of doctors. So I used the hospital security footage to prove my innocence and watched her apologize on her knees before she gave me the $210,000. Watch to save my son's life. There are two types of sterile. There's the surgical sterile, the world of Dr. Whitmore. Bright lights, chrome instruments, and hands scrubbed raw with betadine until they smell like a chemical promise. Then there's my sterile, the world of Diego Morales, the world of bleach water, of waxed linoleum that reflects the grim fluorescent lights of St. Luke's Medical Center in Chicago, of emptying bins filled with the detritus of human frailty. My world smells of lemon disinfectant, and underneath it all, the faint metallic tang of fear and hope that is the baseline scent of every hospital. This is a story about the people who are meant to be invisible, and the moment one was seen for all the wrong reasons. If you believe that everyone has a story worth hearing, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to The Revenge Stories. My sanctuary was not a place, but a person. My 6-year-old son, Leo. Leo, whose laugh was a sudden, unexpected chord of music in our cramped second-floor apartment. Leo, who was currently fighting a war in his own tiny body against acute lymphoblastic leukemia. My entire life was a tight orbit around him in this hospital. By day, I was Dad, the comforter, the reader of stories, the holder of the bucket during chemo-induced nausea. By night, I was D. Morales, Environmental Services, the ghost who mopped the floors of the very ICU where my son had been a patient just months before. The pattern of injustice wasn't a person. It was a system. It was the crushing weight of medical bills that arrived in our mailbox with the grim regularity of the tides. It was the way the receptionist's smile would tighten when I handed over our insurance card, knowing the copay would be a struggle. It was the quiet, unspoken understanding that my son's life had a price tag, and I was falling tragically short of meeting it. A memory, as sharp as the edge of a broken thermometer. I was working a double, mopping the hallway outside oncology. I saw Dr. Evans, Leo's oncologist, walking with a couple, their faces etched with the same terrified hope I knew so well. He was explaining a new, targeted therapy. "The results are promising," he'd said, "but it's out of network. The deposit alone is $60,000. The man had crumpled, right there in the hall, his sobs echoing on my freshly mopped floor. I kept my head down, swishing the mop, but I felt his despair in my bones. That could be me. That would be me. Another flashback from a staff meeting. The head of Environmental Services was lecturing us on professional decorum. Remember, you are background. The patients and the medical staff are the focus. Be efficient, be thorough, but be invisible. I remember looking at my hands, chapped and raw from chemicals, and thinking that these invisible hands were the only thing standing between my son and the abyss. The third memory was the most personal. Leo had spiked a fever and we'd rushed to the ER. He was admitted, and I had to leave his bedside to start my shift. As I was emptying the trash in his room, a new nurse bustled in. "Sir, you'll have to leave. We need to examine the patient," she'd said, not unkindly but without looking at me. I was just the janitor. She didn't know I was the father holding my son's hand. I pointed to Leo, and her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Morales." But the sting remained. In this world, I was defined by my uniform. This was my life. A relentless grinding pressure. My sanctuary was the few hours of sleep I managed. The sound of Leo's steady breathing, and the small defiant act of keeping this hospital clean. It was a battle against germs and grief, fought with a mop and a quiet heart. I was fighting for my son's future in the most literal way possible, one clean floor at a time. The Cardiac ICU on the 8th floor was my territory from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It was a place of hushed voices and beeping monitors, where life hung by a thread. I knew the rhythms, the sounds. I'd seen families gather. I'd seen them leave, their worlds either put back together or shattered forever. I tried to be a ghost, a silent, soothing presence. But on this night, the thread was about to snap, and I was about to be pulled into the vortex. The code blue in room 8114 had been called at 1:30 a.m. The air in the hallway changed, crackling with a desperate energy. Doctors and nurses flooded the room, a well-rehearsed ballet of crisis. I stayed back, leaning on my mop handle near the nurses' station, giving them space but ready to clean up any debris, any spilled fluids. It was what I did. I saw the wife, Mrs. Eleanor Grant, being led out by a nurse. She was a regal woman in her late 60s, dressed in a silk blouse and tailored slacks, now wrinkled from a long vigil. Her face was a mask of controlled terror. She was led to the family waiting room, a small, bleak space with cheap furniture and a coffee machine that never worked quite right. Time stretched and compressed. The frantic activity in 814 eventually slowed. The team emerged, their shoulders slumped, their faces grim. The lead surgeon, Dr. Whitmore, a man with the patrician confidence of someone who had never worried about a utility bill, walked over to the family room. I saw him go in, his posture already telegraphing the bad news. I heard a single piercing wail that cut through the quiet hallway like a shard of glass. Then silence. A few minutes later, Dr. Whitmore emerged. He didn't look left or right. He just walked straight down the hall and disappeared into the doctor's lounge. The door swung shut behind him. The show was over for him. This was my cue. The hallway was empty now. The drama had concluded, and it was time for the cleanup. I pushed my mop bucket toward the area outside 814. The floor was a mess of discarded packaging, a stray glove, a splash of saline. I worked methodically, the swish of the mop the only sound. I was wearing blue hospital scrubs, the universal uniform, but mine were provided by Environmental Services. At 2:14 a.m., the family room door flew open. Mrs. Grant stood there, transformed. The controlled, elegant woman was gone. In her place was a raw nerve of grief. Her makeup was streaked in tragic rivers down her cheeks. In her hand, she clutched her husband's Rolex, a heavy gold thing he must have taken off before surgery. Her eyes, wild and unfocused, scanned the hallway. They landed on me. I was the only one there, a man in scrubs, standing near the scene of the crime. Her face contorted with a rage so pure it was almost biblical. "You!" she screamed, her voice echoing in the sterile corridor. "You killed him!" Before I could process the words, before I could speak, she was on me. She moved with a shocking speed. She swung the hand holding the Rolex, the metal band acting as a brutal knuckle duster, and slapped me across the face with all her strength. The world exploded in a burst of white-hot pain. The edge of the watch face sliced deep into my cheekbone. I stumbled back, my mop clattering to the floor. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Security guards, who had been a discreet presence, froze. Nurses at the station gasped, their hands flying to their mouths. The scene was surreal, a frozen tableau of violence in the quiet hall. She didn't stop. She grabbed the collar of my scrubs, her nails digging into my neck. "You said we did everything. Then you just walked away. You murderer!" She was surprisingly strong, fueled by a bottomless well of anguish, and she dragged me, stumbling, back into the family room. I was too stunned to resist. The pain in my face was searing. The humiliation was a cold wash. "Ma'am, please," I managed to choke out. She shoved me into a cheap vinyl chair. "Don't you ma'am me. Look at me. Look at what you did." My badge, which had been swinging from my lanyard, now lay against my chest. D. Morales, Environmental Services. It was clearly visible. She saw it. Her eyes flickered to it, and for a second I saw a flicker of confusion. But the grief was too strong. It bulldozed right over the truth. "I don't care what your badge says. You were the one. You gave up on him." Through the open door, I could see into the doctor's lounge. Dr. Whitmore was sitting at a table sipping a coffee, scrolling through his phone. He was separated from this nightmare by just a few yards and a pane of glass. He was the man who had pronounced her husband dead. He was the one who had walked away, and he was drinking coffee. This was the line in the sand. It wasn't just the slap, though the blood dripping onto my scrubs was real enough. It was the utter annihilation of my dignity. It was being accused of the ultimate failure, of causing a death. when my entire life was dedicated to preserving one single life, my son's. The shift happened not in a burst of anger, but in a cold, clear understanding of the profound unfairness of it all. I was the most convenient target, the invisible man who had suddenly been thrust into the spotlight for a tragedy he didn't create. The family room was crowded now. A charge nurse, 2 security guards, and a hospital administrator named Mr. Hill had joined us. Mrs. Grant was sobbing, her rage spent, replaced by a hollow, keening grief. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "He did it. He's the one." Mr. Hill, a man whose job was to mitigate liability, looked from her to me. He saw the blood on my face, the clear badge, the janitor's cart visible in the hallway. His face was a conflict of protocols. "Mrs. Grant," he said gently, "this is Diego Morales. He's with our environmental services team. He's a janitor. He was in scrubs." "He was right there," she insisted, though her conviction was wavering, being replaced by a dawning, horrifying uncertainty. Just then, my phone, which was in my scrub pocket, buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. It was the specific, insistent pattern I had set for Leo's oncologist, Dr. Evans. My heart, which was already pounding from the assault, seized with a new, more familiar terror. A call at 2:20 a.m. could only mean one thing. Something was wrong with Leo. I have to take this," I mumbled, my voice thick. "It's my son's doctor." Mr. Hill nodded, his expression shifting from professional concern to genuine pity. He knew about Leo. I fumbled the phone out of my pocket. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I answered. "Dr. Evans? Is Leo okay?" Mrs. Grant watched me, her sobs quieting to ragged breaths. I listened. Dr. Evans's voice was calm but charged with urgency. "Diego, I have incredible news. We found a bone marrow match. A perfect match. It's a miracle. The air left my lungs. A perfect match. The thing we had been praying for. The thing that could save my son's life." Then came the caveat. The always inevitable caveat. "But Diego, the donor is international. The harvest, the transport, the procedure. We need a deposit to secure it. $180,000. And we need it by 8 a.m. this morning or we lose the slot. $180,000. By 8 a.m. the number was so vast, so impossible, it was almost funny. It was a number from another universe, the universe of billionaires and their Rolexes, not the universe of janitors and their mops. The hope that had soared in my chest crashed and burned, leaving a colder, heavier despair than before. I sank to my knees, right there on the floor of the family room. The phone slipped from my hand. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. I was a hollowed-out shell. The cut on my face throbbed in time with my breaking heart. Mrs. Grant had been watching this entire devastating performance. She saw the hope light up my face and she saw it extinguish. She saw me crumble. Her own grief, for a moment, was eclipsed by a shocking, clear-minded curiosity. "What is it?" she asked, her voice quiet now. "What did they say?" Mr. Hill, looking deeply uncomfortable, picked up my phone. He put it on speaker. "Dr. Evans? This is Robert Hill, Hospital Administration. Can you repeat that for the record?" Dr. Evans's voice filled the small room, crisp and clinical. "We have a bone marrow match for Leo Morales. The procedure requires a $180,000 deposit by 8 a.m. today to proceed." The silence that followed was absolute. The security guards looked at the floor. The nurses looked away. They all knew what that number meant to a man like me. Mrs. Grant's face underwent a seismic shift. The last of her rage vanished, replaced by a dawning, horrifying comprehension. She wasn't just looking at a janitor she had mistakenly accused. She was looking at a father, a man fighting for his son's life, a man she had just assaulted in the worst moment of his own life. Her eyes, now clear and sharp, went from my bleeding face to my badge, to the hallway where my mop still lay on the floor. She looked toward the doctor's lounge, where Dr. Whitmore was now laughing at something on his phone. "The camera," she said, her voice a whip crack of authority, all trace of hysteria gone. "I want to see the CCTV for this hallway. From the time the code was called until right now, Get it for me, now." This was the strategic awakening. The truth was the only weapon I had, but I was too broken to wield it. In her shock and her privilege, Mrs. Grant had picked it up for me. She was now fighting to uncover a different truth, not just about who was in the hallway, but about the fundamental injustice she had just participated in. Mr. Hill, recognizing the shift in power and the potential for a catastrophic lawsuit, complied immediately. He ushered us all into a secure security office where a bank of monitors displayed feeds from all over the hospital. A technician pulled up the footage from the 8th floor ICU hallway, time-stamped from 1:30 a.m. We watched, a silent, grim audience. We saw the code blue, the flurry of activity. We saw Dr. Whitmore go into the family room and emerge. We saw him walk directly to the doctor's lounge and go inside. The timestamp showed 2:08 a.m. Then, the camera showed me. Pushing my mop bucket into the frame at 2:12 a.m., I was methodically cleaning, head down, doing my job. The hallway was empty except for me. At 2:14 a.m., Mrs. Grant burst out and attacked me. The evidence was irrefutable, recorded in stark black and white. Dr. Whitmore had been in the lounge for 6 full minutes before the confrontation. I had been mopping the entire time. Mrs. Grant stared at the screen, her hand over her mouth. The final piece of her reality shattered. She had not only attacked the wrong man, she had attacked him while the right man was relaxing just feet away. She turned and walked back into the main hallway, where a small crowd of night staff and a few of her own family members had gathered, drawn by the commotion. She stood in the center of the circle, under the bright, unforgiving lights. She looked at me, at the blood drying on my cheek, at the profound despair in my eyes. Her own composure finally broke, but not in rage, in utter, devastating remorse. She collapsed to her knees, not in a faint, but in a gesture of profound submission. "I hit the wrong man," she whispered, then louder, her voice clear and carrying through the hall. "I accused the wrong man. I am so sorry." All eyes were on her. Then they turned to me. I walked over to her. The pain in my face was nothing compared to the ache in my soul from Dr. Evans's call. I looked down at this woman, this billionaire widow, brought as low as I was. There was no anger left in me, only a vast, exhausted pity. "Ma'am," I said, my voice quiet but every word etched into the silence. "I clean blood. I don't make it." The sentence hung in the air, a perfect, devastating epitaph for the entire night. It spoke of my role, my dignity, my innocence, and the cruel irony of her accusation. She looked up at me, her eyes swimming in tears. She saw the truth of me, not as a janitor, but as a man, a father, a man who had just been handed a miracle with a price tag he could never meet. In a sudden, fluid movement, she yanked the heavy Rolex from her own wrist. The gold and steel gleamed under the lights. She held it out to me, pressing the cold metal into my palm. "This," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "this pays for your son." The air left the hallway in a collective gasp. The watch, a symbol of her husband's life and her own misguided rage, was now being offered as a lifeline. It wasn't an apology. It was restitution. It was redemption. Mr. Hill started to say something about protocols, about liability, but Mrs. Grant cut him off with a look. "The watch is mine. I can give it to whomever I wish." She then turned that same gimlet gaze toward the doctor's lounge. "And as for the man who actually did walk away from my husband, I believe the hospital board will be hearing from my lawyers. Abandoning a grieving family post-mortem to drink coffee is not the standard of care I expect from St. Luke's." In that moment, the reckoning was complete. The truth had not just exonerated me, it had empowered me, and it had utterly dismantled the careless authority of Dr. Whitmore. The dawn broke over Chicago, but my world had already been remade. The Rolex, a Patek Philippe, sold at a private auction for $10,000. The $180,000 deposit was wired to the hospital by 7:45 a.m. The remaining $30,000 was placed in a trust for Leo's ongoing care. The transplant procedure was scheduled. The miracle was secured. Leo received the bone marrow transplant. It was a long, difficult road, but he responded beautifully. The color returned to his cheeks, the light to his eyes. The war was not over, but the tide had decisively turned. Mrs. Eleanor Grant, true to her word, established the Charles Grant Memorial Scholarship named for her husband, dedicated to helping hospital support staff pursue degrees in medicine. I was the first recipient. With the security of Leo's health and the financial backing of the scholarship, I resigned from environmental services and enrolled in pre-med courses at the University of Chicago. Dr. Whitmore was indeed stripped of his surgical privileges at St. Luke's after an internal review, spurred by Mrs. Grant's lawsuit, uncovered a pattern of negligent post-operative care. His career, built on arrogance, crumbled. Years later, I, Diego Morales, stood in a different operating room at St. Luke's. I was no longer a ghost in the hallway. I was a medical student, scrubbing in for my first surgical rotation. On my wrist, under the sterile sleeve, was the same Patek Philippe Rolex. Mrs. Grant had had it professionally cleaned and serviced after I sold it, and then she bought it back from the collector for me. Inside the case back, she had it engraved. To the man who cleaned up my mess. It was a reminder of where I came from, a reminder that dignity isn't about your job, but about your character, a reminder that sometimes justice isn't about revenge, but about a broken world being made right through unexpected acts of grace. The thematic conclusion of my story is this: your value is not determined by your title or your tax bracket, but by the strength of your heart in the face of overwhelming odds. There will always be those who look past you, who dismiss you, who see only the uniform and not the person wearing it. But your integrity is your true currency, and when you are tested, hold fast to it. For you never know when your quiet dignity, in the face of someone else's storm, might become the very thing that saves you. If you believe that everyone deserves to be seen for who they truly are, and that redemption is always possible, then let this story be a testament to the power of truth and grace. If this journey from the mopping bucket to the operating room moved you, help us share more stories like it. Like, share, and subscribe to The Revenge Stories.